Masechet Batra Daf Kuf Lamed Tet, continuing from Kuf Lamed Het, Amud Bet by the Mishnah on the bottom. Ha'av Todesh Uma'achil V'chol Mishir Tzeh. A father can detach produce, give it whoever he wants as long as alive. Umet Sheniach Talush, whenever it's detached when he dies, Harehu Sheyorushin belongs to the heirs. They split it evenly. Talush in sounds like only detached you can give away. Mehubar lo, but sounds like if it's attached produce, it does not belong to everybody, but only the one who received it as the gift. Gemara says Vatani with Breta that says Shamina da mehubari nelokeach. You assess the attached produce for a buyer, which shows, however, that the buyer is not entitled to that produce. Therefore, we have to check how much it's worth, and he has to pay that much back to the heirs. So we see that if in that case the buyer bought the rights off the children is not able to get the attached produce, how come in our case of our Mishnah, the case of a gift, the sons do keep it even if it was gifted elsewhere. Where it says Lakasha Kan. Our Mishnah, Bebino is referring to the son. Kan Ba'acher. In the case of the Brayta, which says it does not belong to the guy, it's referring to someone else. If the guy is giving it to his own son, then he wants the produce to be given as part of the gift. But if someone else were to buy it, and the father doesn't want to give it to him, he only gives him the actual field and not the attached produce. Okay, new Mishnah. The father died and left older and younger sons. The older ones don't get supported from the property at the expense of the younger ones. They don't get extra stuff. And also vice versa. The younger ones don't get stuff at the expense of the older ones. Everybody gets equal. The older ones were married. The younger ones also can get married from the same property. They get paid. The younger ones say, "Hare ananu sim tigrashan we want to get married the same way you got married, and Shmin Lam, we don't listen to them. Ela mashim tana him at the end of the time, whatever was given, we'll explain what's going on. And yeah, but not if he has older and younger daughters when he died, the older ones don't get paid at the expense of the younger ones. The younger ones, the older ones. Ela hakim sure they split it equally. Not the older ones got married already. Yes, the younger ones also get married. If they want to say that we want to get married the same way you got married, um, we still don't listen to him. The following advantages what the daughters have over the sons. The daughters are fed at the expense of the sons. But they're not fed at the expense of the daughters. We'll explain everything one at a time in the Gemara. Gemara says, Marava, Hi Gadol Ahai. In regarding to the oldest brother, the Labash of Ekasemi Beta, he got dressed and he, let's say he bought himself nice clothes from the property. My Davaravat. Whatever he did, and he doesn't, I wouldn't say he stole it, but he shouldn't have done it. But if he did it, they don't have to pay, he doesn't have to pay it back. When Banatan Arishan says, you don't have to get paid back. You do, it seems like you can't take it. The guy says, that's referring to a guy who's not working at all. He's just he wants to just take stuff from the property. That is asur. If if he's an idler, if he's not doing anything, then why would he get it? What's the hidush? The one says no. The hidush is maybe the brothers would want him to take care of himself, his appearance, and get dressed nicely, and therefore maybe he shouldn't have to pay. Maybe he shouldn't have to pay back. Mashman, in that case, he would have to pay back. He shouldn't take it. Okay. Younger ones, older ones. We mentioned what's going on. I come out. What's the story with the weddings? Can they take or not? They are contradicting cases. One of the other things, Mishnah means as follows. The older ones got married after the father died, and they used their father's estate to pay for their wedding. And the younger ones can also do the same thing. And I say the older ones got married while the father was alive, and they used the father's money. The father gave money while he was alive. And the younger ones said after their father died, I don't know, we want to get married just like you got married. You got married in Shirat now we want to get married in Shirat Zion. We don't listen to them. The father gave them, he gave it to them. You don't get that. And we basically say it is what it is. Next, daughters. I'm going to leave it Rabbi. Rabbi teach us. Let's say the woman borrowed money and it was a verbal loan. It wasn't a written loan. And she used the money. She used the stuff that she had borrowed. So now that she spent the money that she borrowed, then she gets married. Is the husband considered a buyer of that loan-ish, or is he considered an heir to that property? So the property that she brought into the marriage that now has a lien on it is now at risk. So therefore, Lokeach Haviv is considered a buyer of the wife's properties, and This is an undocumented loan, verbal loan, and therefore it cannot be collected from the purchaser, and therefore the wife's creditor cannot take the property from the husband. Odim al Yoshai, maybe it's considered an inheritor of it. And then umilva apik of and therefore an oral loan will be considered collectible from an heir, and therefore the creditor will have access. Like Martin Zamarle, Tanina of Mishnah. Nes ugdlot yis ugtanot. If the older ones get married, the younger ones can get married. My love, Nes ugdlot lebal sounds like the Mishnah is maybe saying that if the older ones get daughtered, the older daughters get married, rather, they can use the funds from the property. Yes, ugtanot libal. And if when the younger ones get married, they also collect funds from the older sisters. That even though the sisters got married, seemingly that it's considered an heir, and therefore they could still pull money that they were owed. The Gemara says, "Let not approve." Nes ugdlot lebal yis ugtanot lebal. It means that if the older ones married using from the property, the younger ones can also marry using the same amount of money. Any that so? We said that Mibraita says that if the older ones marry husbands, the younger ones can marry using the same money, seemingly that it's subject to collection and therefore it's considered an error. It's different. In that case of being sustenance is being sustained, financial support, that's different than regular debt. So, meaning in a case of where you have to feed them, that's something that's widely known, and therefore they should have known that, and therefore there is a lien, and therefore you would have to pay it out. Versus a case of a regular undocumented debt, that's different, and therefore you cannot collect from the land. Okay. Seemingly, this is the same answer that we had sent from in his letter, Ravin said in the letter, Mishim Mehun died. Veniach Amana Ubat left a widow and a daughter. Amanaton Nazir because the widow can use his property to feed herself. And said about it, the daughter gets married. Amanaton the widow could still use the property. Meta Habar, the daughter died, and the husband gets the property. He said, I said this one time happened to me. I saw this happen. The widow can still use the property of the son-in-law. Mar says, if if it makes sense to say Bishlam Yerush having considered an heir, that's why the mother-in-law can still use the property because she's inheriting it. But if the husband considered a buyer, then why is she still being fed? He should not be able to collect anymore. The Gemara says, well, you need Ravin to show you this, that he's considered an heir? But the Mishnah says it clearly. The following acquisitions, the following purchases do not go back to the previous owner by Yavel. Most things go back by Yavel except for the following. The firstborn portion of the firstborn portion does not go back. But someone who inherits his wife. So we see a husband that gets from his wife's property is considered an inheritor, not a buyer. So what do we need is letter from Ravin. What's the Hidush? Okay, Ravin sent his letter. Is that, but we still have another way of looking at it. We made a takana on Usha. A woman sold milog property, the property that she brought into the marriage during the husband's life. And she died. The husband can take it away from the guys who bought it. This proves that he's a buyer. He has first dibs. Answer is Hachami made him both, sometimes like an heir, sometimes like a buyer, because we want him to have an advantage. How? We treat him like an heir because we don't want him to lose out in the case that was sold, and therefore we want him to have access to it, therefore considered a purchaser. In the case regarding the the husband to recover properties, we treat him like a buyer, because we also don't want him to lose out. But regarding the widow, we should consider the because we're dealing with a widow and her loss, we treat him like an heir, and therefore the widow has stronger rights in that regard because we feel bad for her. In that case where you could lose out because of a purchaser, we still treat him like a buyer. But how come we're not worried about the other people's loss? The other people who bought from him, they bought it, and then she's going to pull it back. That's not fair. What about their loss? Where it says Hatam inhu they brought it upon themselves. They should have known. Kevin the ikaba, since the seller was married to the husband, the woman's married to the husband, they should have realized they should not have bought property from a woman who's living with her husband, who will have access to it after her death. Therefore, dug your own grave, it's your problem, and therefore we don't care about the purchasers. Amen.